mugs always look way bigger when you're throwing them than when they're fired. Supposedly only drop 15%, but it seems like it's a lot more than that. There's so many different shapes you can make and so many different ways you can do these things. There's no right, there's no wrong. But I'll tell you, you gotta be able to get rid of them. You can't get rid of them. You get this big, huge inventory of pots that nobody wants. You get sick of that. What you're gonna find out is that it's like any other artistic endeavor. It's a lot like a river. Kind of why I call this Pudding River, but one of the many reasons, I guess. But at any rate, if you fail to find a way for an outlet for your art, bottom line is you're going to quit making art because you don't have an outlet. It's got to have something that, you know, guides you, maybe not guide you or anything like that, no goofy stuff, but I mean, you just can't just make stuff and keep making it and nobody wanting it. One, that's expensive, so you're going to have a sugar daddy or a sugar mama or something to pay for all that stuff you make. And then you're going to have to buy an extra storage unit for it all, or you're not going to make it anymore. You're just going to quit. And I don't think nobody gets into something like this to quit. You know, so if you're going to make weird stuff, okay, just understand weird stuff is going to sit on your shelf for years to come, and your kids are going to, after you die, are going to throw it in the dump. So, yay you were true to your art. So what I'm doing here is I've got a little hole that I drilled on the end of this, and a hole here, and it lines it up. So if I ever want to put something back on the wheel, it keeps it at the same kind of basic center. Once you center it to here, you can always get back to center if you need to. You don't have to do that very often, but it sure helps when you do need to do it. Okay, so that was a basic mug that my wife likes. So I usually I'm getting ready for an art show, so, well, it's not really an art show. There's a farmer's market, and I'm going to go sell my stuff there, cheap, because this is just a hobby. I need more materials, so I'm going to fire sale it so I can get some more clay. So I'm going to have several different kinds of things that people like that they want to buy. What I'm doing here is I'm using my thumb as a measuring stick here, and it tells me how deep I can go. So I can go down to there, so when I get about to that I stop, so I have enough on the bottom and I'm not having to spend time measuring the depth and all that stuff. I just kind of get an idea to do that. I'm probably going to do another video on how I trim it. I mean, it's not how to trim, it's how I do it. And there's no bad way to do it. Well, I guess there is a bad way to do it. It's something that doesn't get trimmed. I suppose that'd be bad, but you know, it's not like this is the only way to trim a pot. You can trim a pot in a lot of different ways. Okay, here's another technique. So you can take your you take your rib and push out. So what you've done there is your mug is going to have that curve that I pulled up a little bit of extra clay that was in the bottom there and pull it up. But basically, that's another way to do it. You know, you can to make the shape that you're after, and that gives you. It's a lot more control, more. It's kind of, my wife calls these George Jetson cups because they look all sharp and that, and she don't like it. She hates it actually. But I've got friends that think they're pretty cool. So it's all each person has their own care, what they care for. But when you're selling at a farmer's market, you know you've got all kinds of people with all kinds of things they like, and you wanna have your several different types of variety of things, so people will want, they'll want that. I always want to cut off the bat, even though these are removable bats. There's no thing yet, but for this bat isn't flexible, so I can't really let it kind of dry off and then bend it so that it'll release. So I have to cut it off. So I always cut it off, and then later when it starts to harden up, then it's no problem. Okay, so there's two. A hole there. I always do this too. The things adhere better to water to water. That's what clays get sticky and that sort of thing. And dry and clay. If it's dry, clay don't like to stick. So if you've got a dry bat that's absolutely dry, you don't want it sopping wet because then it'll slide off and stuff can get pretty greasy. But if it's absolutely dry, then a lot of times it won't stick on that bat very well, and then you got problems because it tries to slide off on you. That's a pain in the butt. So you just put a little water on it, sticks a little bit better, and make everybody happy. So if you were going to do a whole bunch of these and you wanted them to be really similar, what you do is you can kind of put a lump of clay and stick a stick into it, and then have a gauge, so you try to throw everything to that point on the stick. That's a great technique for turning out a bunch of them. So right now I'm just making all kinds of different shapes for different types of cups. This next one is going to be what's called a tankard. Tankards are kind of in the same shape as like a mason jar. Relatively flat on the bottom. Oh yeah, this little maneuver I'm doing right here. When you throw stuff, you want to compress the bottom of your pot. That pot, that clay needs to be compressed. If you don't, when it dries, it can develop what's called an S-crack. Basically, it's just a kind of wavy crack that follows the spinning of the clay, because you're driving that clay into a spinning it around like that. So it's in kind of a interior structure is a little bit into a spiral. So if you if you don't compress the top like the bottom like that, then what you get is that crack. And of course, once you get that, then you get to throw the pot into the trash if you don't notice it before the firing, which is kind of annoying because you just took up room in your kiln and you can't do anything with it. So always compress the bottom of that pot before you get too far down, because sometimes when you get these things real tall, they don't can't get your hand back in there very well. So do that in the first move, and it makes things easier. So a tankard is a kind of a straight up and down, like a mason jar. Forcing it out. So just kind of, when you're pulling it up, whichever way you're doing, kind of pull towards the center of the pot, which kind of drives it closer to straight up and down, which is what if you're doing this kind of pot, that's what you want, right? And then you come back in after you get done making a pull, and you can this is called coddling. Kind of what that does, trying to put it back onto center. That's what that's doing. So the more you can pull, the lighter the pot will be in comparison to its volume, and the less amount of trimming you got to do. It's what's called throwing to the form. You get it too thin, and then it's really not very functional, so that's not good either. So I guess it's a balancing act like everything else in life, right? Okay, this process is compressing the rim and also creating a rounded lip that fits to the lip. You know, and that's really important in a mug, that you want that kind of curve there, because that's how our lips are made. Now I'm sure there are some actresses that have lips that are now made far different than that, but that's the way the majority of us have lips. Okay, all that does is just putting this flat part down on there and letting it ride, and then holding that up against there to kind of make sure that that's straight up and down. And that is the basics of a tankard. Okay, there's the tankard. It looks like I'm running out of time here because we gotta go to the movies tonight with our buddies. So I'm gonna do one more and then I'm gonna be done here. Put all this. So I think I'll just call that a day, or not a day, but call it quits on this little video. But so what we've done here is we've made 3 different types of mugs. Now tomorrow I'll put the handles on it. But this one, more of a tankard shape, straight up and down. This one's a little more cleaned up and got more of a curve there, very symmetrical curve. And then this one's, I don't know, this is just a Fat Boy Cup, I guess. That's what we call it. So that's it. That's throwing mugs.